Hey everyone, welcome to Catholics in Ordinary Time. My name is Father Jack Benz, and I'm your host for this podcast. I thought I'd take a moment here at the end of season one to kind of recap for you all, but maybe for myself, like why am I doing this podcast anyway? Why did we decide, my team and I, decide to take on Catholics in Ordinary Time? Well, it kind of all started with a question about the Synod. Now, the Synod, as you may recall, was this huge listening process that then Pope Francis kicked off to do a synod on synodality, which was trying to reorient the church into a listening body to understand how to move forward in the church. Now, this is a huge unwieldy project to try to listen to as many Catholics as possible over a 3-year period, and it was imperfect. And I was a pastor at Blessed Sacrament down in Hollywood during that time. And I kind of saw some of the listening phase and I saw it in action. And I think it was not great. It's very hard to gather people to ask them questions about their experience of the church. It's harder than I thought it was going to be. And it turned out that attendance was sparse. And the people that did show up are the folks that we'd kind of already heard from over and over and over again. I felt they were probably the already represented as far as trying to understand or seek out voices that were unheard in the church. And isn't often the case in parishes, there's a thousand other things going on, a lot of pressures. And so we did our listening sessions and did them online and in person, and then submitted a kind of a thin report with the help of volunteers, and then kind of just got back into the whirl of parish life. And so that was that. But I was taken by the desire on the part of church leadership to describe the church as a listening church, trying to see what would that be like. And for me, I take seriously that the Holy Spirit is still alive and well and working in our church. And if that's the case, how do we open up spaces to listen to what the Spirit is calling us towards now? And often that comes from the periphery, not from the center. And folks in the center know that on some level, that it gets very easy to keep doing the same thing all the time and assuming that we're listening to the Spirit when actually the Spirit is alive and well everywhere. But really, the exciting part or the what's next part is often on the periphery, often in ordinary people. So I thought maybe we could go seek out those folks where they live. And it turns out a lot of people live, yes, in regular life, but there's so many people in the digital world, so many people that are interacting with social media, online a lot. All of us are, So how do we engage them there? How do we open up the listening spaces there, right? Because if you spend some time on the online, in certainly the Catholic online world, it seems like there's a lot of people talking, a lot of the church talking to the people. There's a lot of people with a lot to say, often male with a collar or in a habit, doing a lot of talking. A lot of smart people, a lot of intelligent, thoughtful people talking, and there's a lot of experts going on. And that seems great. It seems good. There's also a lot of podcasts with interested Catholic, again, often men, who are really kind of banging a drum about the far right kind of Catholicism. And that's fine too. It's a big church. But again, that seems pretty well represented. So a lot of thoughtful, engaging people taking on the more, I'd say, more conservative part of the church or feeding that part. But what about the more progressive and the more kind of middle of the road even? Like how do we open spaces for that conversation to happen? So it's strange, but my phantom audience for Catholics in Ordinary Time is church leadership. Now, I don't know that they'll ever listen, but church leadership, I'm kind of building these interviews with ordinary Catholics for church leadership to understand more. Good. So the first set of Catholics in Ordinary Time, the first season, we did kind of 9 episodes, was about young adults. So young adults who were baptized Catholic, but some of them stayed in the church and some of them left the church. And so we wanted to know, I certainly wanted to know, well, why? So tell me more, how does that work? And I've worked a lot with young adults, and I know that they're always different. I mean, they're always different, and yet they're very much similar one to another and also to our own experiences if we're no longer young adults as it was then. But what I do know is true is that you can talk a lot of nonsense about young adults unless you talk to young adults. So I continue to try to do more of that. So I dove in, took some time to set up, the tech part of it, get over some of those hurdles, which, are still trying. And then also figure out how to do the Zoom piece and started to schedule out a whole set of these interviews or these conversations. And with some generous, kind of brave individuals who I either knew personally or friends of friends who would agree to talk with me for an hour on Zoom about their experience within the Catholic Church. Now I say thoughtful and generous and brave because there wasn't a podcast. So I was hard for me to refer to them. Okay, listen to it and we'd love to have you on it. They just kind of took a plunge with me to have this conversation about what their experience is in the church. So they agreed to speak. And I was in Spokane, but these people were all over the place. So I spoke to people in Denver, LA, Spokane, Boise, south of France, kind of all over the place. Some really interesting folks. While I was in Spokane, they were everywhere else. Now, first of all, the big piece of the learning for me in this process was trying to understand that, did I like doing this? Because I wasn't doing this before, working as a podcast host. Turns out I do. I've always liked asking people questions and hearing what their life is about. And now I get to do it for my work, which is amazing for me. So as I was finishing up this first season, all these interviews are done in the spring. As you'll notice, if you listen to interviews, you're like, wait, is Pope Francis? And then Pope Francis is sick, and then Pope Francis is dying. And then there's a conclave. People refer to this all along, and it's always out of sequence. So pay attention to that. But people would ask me as I ended up this season, so what did you learn about Catholic young adults? And my point was, young adults are not some uncontacted Amazonian tribe that are completely different than we are. That's just not the case. I mean, if you're not a young adult, you tend to think that the demographic of young adult is different than you are. Well, sort of. But that's the case with any kind of demographic that you're not currently in. You think, well, they're not anything like me. And that's just not true. There's so much more in common once you start talking about it and you realize that you're carrying a lot of your own kind of notions. I mean, young adults are the same. They're just kind of newer to some of the human questions that if you're older, you've had more chance to be with. So I'm aware that a sample group of nine interviews is hardly a big sociological deep dive. It just isn't. So I leave any kind of conclusions about what young adults are at this moment to sociologists. They're doing it. They're doing the nose counting. They're figuring it out. So there's lots of good information. But I began to see these folks as pretty similar one to another. And so a few things stood out that I'd like to share with you and encourage you to go back and listen to all these episodes. But what I really came forth for me was first, again, just like all of us, they are humans in search of community. And a church framework or organization or container can answer that search for that kind of community. The reasons they seek out a church or remain in a church revolve around the community, finding a place to be with people that are seeking community also. This is a big thing. I had one young adult say that she originally went to church because her mother insisted. Okay, so she went to please her mother. But then eventually, and then she was out in the world and on her own, she realized she was going to church to show up for the people that she met there. Now, this seems like a small thing, but it's this kind of ligament or connective tissue that really changes everything for people, is that they begin to show up for each other rather than show up for someone that's not even there, like a parent in this case. So that was pretty consistent across the board. Secondly, the young Catholics that I spoke to were in search of meaning. And when they find a community searching for meaning together, they want to be included. Now, this is a challenge because often young adult Catholics show up in a community because of a job or a spouse, or they went to college and they remained in the city, and they are looking for a church. And they go into a church and they see it not like themselves. I mean, it's just a lot of gray hair and in the congregation and in all the worship roles. So, and representation really matters in these roles. And so young adults don't see themselves there, so it's hard for them to be there. It's kind of the dynamic of a junior high dance. It's like there's no one there because people keep showing up, checking it out, and not going in because there's no one there. And if they don't go in, then there's no one there, so other people don't show up like them. So a word to church leadership. Maybe invite older volunteers to include younger volunteers in the mix so we can start having better representation so people want to be part of it. So thirdly, the folks I talk to use social media in a way that is consistent with the digital natives that they are. And almost all of them were more prone to seek out face-to-face contact in a worship community. Really, really preferring that. And even when I'd ask questions like, well, how was the pandemic? Was it fun? Great because you were finally online? And they're like, no, I hated it. Ugh. I mean, even people that were in tech and do it all day, well, maybe more specifically, they thought, no, I would seek face-to-face. And as far as percentages wise, like how much app support are you getting for your prayer life? One guy I was speaking to said, no, 80% in person, 20% kind of tech support, like using a Hallow app or that sort of thing, or maybe online somewhere else, or if I can't get to church, online. So that was interesting too. Like us, they appreciated a decent sound system in their church. They're ready to help out with a live stream, and they might glance at an Insta account now and again, but nobody left the church because the tech wasn't strong enough, or there wasn't enough digital presence, or the jumbo screens within the worship space were not right, or there wasn't enough smoke, used in the worship experience. It just wasn't the case. Young adults seeking meaning and authenticity. Finally, now this is maybe even just too obvious to state, but in my conversation, what people kept responding to was 3 essential must-have elements to any sustaining worship event. And they were preaching, hospitality, and music. Those 3 things. Hospitality, preaching, music. Again and again, these were the 3 elements that people really responded to, and young adults in particular. This is what invited them in, kept them there, and there were spaces for them to really participate because they felt welcome, hospitality. The music was good, so they could worship, and the preaching was substantive, so there was actual content. Now, I know that the Eucharist is the heart of our worshiping experience, but in my opinion, it's an embedded heart, right? It's not just a heart lying on a slab somewhere. No, it's a heart that's in a body. It's an embedded heart, embedded in all these other pieces that are fundamentally essential, that preaching, hospitality, music, these 3 things really help them. And when they couldn't find these things, they sought nourishment elsewhere. And the folks that I talked to that had left the church, they left for the various reasons, but the reason they were aligning with other churches is because these pieces were stronger. These pieces were simply stronger. But now I could go on because this topic is interesting to me, or you could just, stop now and back up and listen to the episodes that you missed and see what Catholic Ordinary Time, the first season, was all about. We're in the middle of pulling together seasons 2, 3, and even beginning to map out season 4. And I can hardly wait to share all of those with you. Until then, enjoy this first season. And thank you so much for listening, for rating the podcast, for writing a review, for suggesting it to other people. Thank you.